Templates are all those default settings you like to have whenever you first start a project. Examples of default settings would be having fonts or your text, which happens to be all Arial or Times Roman or some sort of fancy script font. It could be the way you like to have your dimensions. It may be having your sheets set up a certain way with your title blocks having specific information. All that information is stored inside of a template file. You can use one of the default template files, which shows up here on the main menu, underneath projects and just some of the default templates. Or you can select on New to create a new project based off of your own existing template. So let's start by selecting on New from underneath projects. Here's that same list of files that we had over here. Most likely though, you want to choose your own template file, something that you've created that has your standards associated with it. To do that, you need to select on the Browse button. This will bring up the Choose Template dialog box. From here, you could surf on your network, find it on your own computer, wherever you store your templates at, you can go to it, and then highlight the one you want to be able to open up. In this case, we can see that there's ones that have default mechanical settings or electrical settings, some that are designed for more of a residential construction, maybe structural. And depending on your version of Revit, some of these templates may be different. Revit Architecture will have some different default templates from Revit 2014. That being said, though, we should all have a default.rte, which stands for default.revit template. Go ahead and select on that and click on Open. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a new project based off of that default template that's available to us. We also could click here where it has Project Template. If we did, we'd be creating our own template from scratch. And when we saved it, it would then be able to browse to in order to pull up those settings again and again on future projects. But for right now, we're just going to select on Project and create a new project based off of the default template. So select on OK. And this brings up our project, once again, based off of the default template. Some of the settings that are going to be in there are default floor plan views, default ceiling plan views, or default elevation views. Anything that would have a schedule associated with it could be preset by default, so the second you start to draw those things in, the schedule will start to populate. You can also load in default families, such as your default walls, doors, windows. The kinds of items you'd like to have from project to project, they can just be in your template. And then when it comes time to start a project, there they are. I'll also point out that if we go in and create a new sheet, that even your title blocks can be in here. So you can have your different size title blocks available to you. Then you select the appropriate title block off of the list and click on OK. It'll bring up your custom title block and you can start to fill up your sheet with information. So template files at their heart are really just a storage area for different information, such as your default wall styles, door styles, your default fonts, which are Times Roman, Arial, the way you'd like to see your dimensions set up, as well as such things as your default title blocks. So all those default settings and default content that you like to start your projects with, those should all reside in your starting template. In its simplest terms, a project's origin point is simply a three-dimensional spot in space. In other words, it could be a corner of the building, it could be the edge of the site, it could be a corner of the parking lot, it could even be the middle of a tree. The idea of the project origin point is it's a common point that everybody who's working on the project knows and can recognize. Why you want a project origin point is so that if someone else is working on the project in their office, potentially even in another software program, when it comes time to line their work up with your work, all they have to do is insert the project and then their work will automatically line up with yours, or vice versa. And that can occur if you both share the same project origin point. To set the project origin point, you'll find that underneath the Manage tab, over here, there's an option for project location. Currently, it's grayed out because we're in a 3D view inside of the Revit Advanced project file. But we can get this to not be grayed out by coming underneath floor plans under the project browser and double-clicking on the word Site. This opens up the site plan view, and we can start to specify a project origin point. Now, come up here underneath project location, again under the Manage tab, and select on Coordinates. Come down on the list and choose Specify Coordinates at Point. This will allow you to specify where that project origin point should be at. zoom into a common corner of the building, pick that point, and then tell it that that spot in three-dimensional space is located wherever it is that you type. In this instance, I'm going to tell it it's at 0, 0, and I'll give it an elevation 12,000. From here, if I would click on OK, that will be the new coordinates at that point. Another way that you could get these coordinates is if they've already done the drawings for the site plan, and they'll tell you what those coordinates should be. Then it's a simple matter of coming in, specifying the coordinates at point, typing the correct information, and then selecting OK in order to specify that as being the origin point of your project. So, the origin point of a project, it's used to be able to line up all the different project data for all the different project teams that might be involved in that project. Setting the project location inside of Revit allows us to specify that our site and our building are located at a specific address on Earth, such as we could tell this building that it's going to be located in New York, or Rio de Janeiro, or maybe even in Paris. Now, to do this, we can move up to the Manage tab on the ribbon and click on Manage. On the Project Location palette, we can move up here and select on Location. This will bring up the Location, Weather, and Site dialog box. By default, it'll try to define the location, in this case, by the Internet Mapping Service. It happens to be Google Maps in this case. We could type in an exact address. We can already see that someone has chosen Manchester, New Hampshire for our building. If we'd want to do a different address at this point, we could just highlight this, type in a different address, and then click on Search, and it would automatically find that address at that particular location on the face of the Earth. When it does that, it'll also give us a list of all the closest weather stations to that particular spot on Earth. What that's going to allow us to do is be able to specify or be able to size our different mechanical systems inside of our buildings. It'll also give us the appropriate shade and shadow on our building. So as a result of that, we'll be able to do such things as solar studies and a wide variety of other functions. The other way that we can go about doing this is to change this to the default city list. I use this sometimes if I don't really know where my building is going to be at. I just know it's going to be roughly in this one specific area. And then oftentimes I'll come back in later on and change it to the Internet Mapping Service. But this will give us some ballpark numbers. And I will point out that this city list is quite extensive. If it's a major city and it's in a fairly developed part of the world, there's a good chance it'll end up showing actually on this list. If it doesn't, that's okay. It just means I didn't add it. You can either enter in the latitude and longitude here, or once again, go back to the Internet Mapping Service and have it specify that at this part of the world, this is where I want my building to be at. So, the Location, Weather, and Site can be found underneath the Manage tab, the Location button, and by specifying the exact address of where your building is going to be located at, you'll be able to do such things as solar studies, be able to size mechanical systems, and a variety of other tasks. Whenever you're working on a project, there's really two different kinds of north that we have to consider. The first north is the north that we all think about. It's if you held a compass in your hand and you were looking at the needle on the compass and it was pointing north, that's true north. The other kind of north that we have to worry about is considered project north. Now, project north is oftentimes the way that we draw things in our construction documents so it's nice and easy to read, and we can more easily determine what it is that we're trying to communicate about the design. Now, let's take a look at this inside of the Revit environment so we have a better understanding of this and how we change the settings for those. To begin with, go to your project browser and double-click on the 01 entry-level floor plan to open that up. One of the things we'll find is if we go to the Properties tab down here at the bottom, we're going to scroll down, and right now the orientation is set to Project North. That's okay. What we're going to see is a change here in just a minute. To see this change, come over here to the Manage tab and select on Manage. Where there's Project Location, select on the button which is indicating Position. When that flyout menu appears, select Rotate True North. The view must be oriented to true north. Modify the view's properties or use a different view. Essentially what it's saying is that we need to be able to change this first to true north before we can modify that setting. So that's simple enough to do. Come down here to orientation and change this to true north, and then just click out here in the drawing area. Now let's go through the same process. Move up here underneath the Manage tab again, select on Position, and choose Rotate True North. What we're going to do is we're going to actually specify which direction is the actual compass arrow pointing whenever north is asked about. I want to begin by selecting where this blue dot is and just left-clicking and holding my mouse button down on the blue dot, and then dragging this to essentially my project base point, which is going to be here in the corner of my building, and letting go. Next, we're going to rotate this building around so it's actually pointing toward the direction of north. Maybe it's 12 degrees. If it is, just type in 12 and hit enter on the keyboard. Now this part of the building is facing true north. But you can start to see a potential issue here. If we're going to be doing our construction documents, notes are starting to cross over each other. Certain dimensions are going to get to be fairly difficult to read after a while. Also, trying to fit a building that's oriented like this onto a sheet, it'll take more sheets of paper to be able to document the building. And we're really inviting more errors to occur if we leave the building to be angled like this, because notes are going to start crossing each other and a lot of bad things will occur on communicating our design. As a result of that, we probably want to document our building as being Project North. So now we're beginning to see what the difference is. Project North is the way that we'll document it and actually have our building whenever we're going to be producing a set of construction documents. True North, on the other hand, is the direction of actual north in the real world. You may want to design your building to be true north, and the reason is if it comes time to export this out to other CAD software programs or just other software in general, you want your building to be pointing in the right direction when it comes time to insert that building into the project environment. On the other hand, when it comes time to be able to document your building, you probably want that to be set at Project North so that all your dimension strainers are straight and your text is nice and normal. So to be able to set that, remember, in the properties of each view underneath orientation, you can either specify Project North or True North. Also, there's the button called Position, and by rotating the True North, we can then specify the degree angle as to which direction True North actually is. Thus, when it comes time to draw the building will be facing the right direction. But when it comes time to document the building, it'll also be facing a direction where we can build and dimension it appropriately and have a clean set of plans. Whenever we're drawing a building, we may need to have certain elements be locked in place so that we don't accidentally move them. One of those kinds of items is going to be your structural grids, and we can see those grids here, the lines with the circles here at the top. In order to be able to lock these in place, the fastest way to execute the pin command would be to window around everything we have on the screen and then just select those items we want to have pinned or be locked in place so they can't be moved. To do this, move your mouse up so that the cursor is in the upper right-hand side of the screen, hold your mouse button down, window around everything on the screen, and then let go of the mouse button. This is going to highlight everything in the model in blue. But the only thing that we want to have selected are these lines with the circles. To do it, click on Filter. Here we'll see every element that we have selected. Move over to the Check None button. Now none of them are selected. And put a check next to grids so that only these 22 grids are highlighted. And select on OK. Now that we have our structural grid bubbles highlighted so that we can go through the pinning process, move up here and select on the little pin head up here at the top. This is automatically pinned each and every one of these column grids. If we zoom in, we'll see that we can still select on them, but we can no longer move them from side to side. If we ever did want to come back in here and make a modification to them, it'd be simple enough to do. All we would need to do is select on this little pin head in order to unlock it, and then we'd be able to move this from side to side. And if we wanted to lock it again, just click on the little pin head once more, and that would lock it back in place. But there will be conditions where we don't want to be able to select on the structural grids at all. Even though they're pinned, sometimes if you select on them, they kind of get in the way. You might accidentally snap to them when you don't want to. In order to prevent this, in the lower right-hand side of the screen, you'll see something that also looks like a pin head. And this is Select Pinned Elements. If you select on that, you'll notice that if you window around or try to select on any of these lines, anything that's currently pinned you will not be able to do a selection for. If we ever need to come back in and make a selection, you can come back down here again and select on that Select Pinned Elements command. And now you can see that we can highlight on it, unpin it if we wished, and be able to make our changes. So pinning an element inside of Revit means to select on it, come up to the little pinhead tool, select on pin, and that element will then stay pinned in its position so it cannot be moved, edited, or adjusted. Phases are the different periods of time in a Revit project. Examples of phases would be the existing building, demolition plans, and new construction plans. To create these different phases of time inside of a Revit project, we need to come underneath the Manage tab and select on Phases. And this will bring up the Phasing dialog box. The Phasing dialog box currently has two phases set up inside of it. The first one is the existing phase, and the second one is the new construction phase. Well, I'd like to be able to add a demolition phase between these two phases. To do that, come over here underneath Insert and select on After. What that did is it inserted after the first phase another phase. If you click where it has phase 1, type in the word demo. So this is going to be our demolition phase. Really, these could be named anything that we want it to be. It could be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or January, February, March. The point of it being is that anything at the top of the list is in the past, and anything toward the bottom of the list is going to be in the future. Move your mouse down and select on OK. Now we have those three different periods of time set up in the Revit project, but the next thing we need to be able to do is have three views, in this case 3 first floor plan views, that show each of those periods of time. If you move to your project browser, you'll see a level 1 floor plan view. Right-click on that, and let's create 2 copies of this level 1 floor plan view. Each of these copies are going to have a different period of time from what the current level 1 view has. Select on Duplicate View and Duplicate. Do that exact same process again. Right-click on level 1, go to Duplicate View, and Duplicate. Let's give each one of those a unique name now. On one of your copies, right-click and select Rename. And we'll just call this one Level 1 Existing. And select on OK. For your other copy, rename it Level 1 Demo. And the final one, which is our original view, right-click on that, rename it Level 1 New, which stands for Level 1 New Construction, and select on OK. If it asks you, would you like to rename the corresponding levels and views, just tell that no. Now double-click where we have the Level 1 Existing so that we've activated that view. Next, come down on the Properties and scroll down to the bottom of your properties, and you'll notice that the current phase for this is New Construction. We don't want that. We want this to be Existing. So change that to say Existing, and then click on the Apply button. Click inside of your drawing area, move up here to the Architecture tab, and select the Wall command. Now, it doesn't matter which type of wall that we do or the dimensions of the wall. We're just drawing in some walls that we're going to ultimately do some demolition to, and then we'll see how these walls look in the new construction phase. Click once, and then click again once you have a wall that's maybe 100 feet long. It doesn't have to be exactly that, but just close to it. Draw another wall straight down. And I'm doing roughly a 100 by 100 building, but it doesn't need to be perfect. Once you have your 4 walls, draw a few interior walls as well. In my case, I'm drawing just 3 interior walls like this. When you finally have your walls done, hit Escape a couple of times on your keyboard in order to finish off the command. Once you've done that, just verify that in fact this is the existing phase. Also, if you select on one of your walls, you'll see that the phase created for that wall was the existing phase. And as of right now, it's never been demolished, or the phase demolished is set at none. To get out of the commands, just make sure you hit Escape a couple of times on the keyboard. Next, what we want to do is move into our demo plan. So double-click on Level 1 Demo. The first thing you might notice is it looks like all your walls have went away, and the reality of it is that they kind of have, but they still exist inside of your project. If your walls go away or they look like they've kind of vanished, my case, you can start to see they've actually come back, which is what I'd expect. Move over here to Properties, come down here to the bottom, and change this phase from being New Construction to Demo, and click on Apply. We are now in the demo phase of our project. And if we select on one of these interior walls, we'll have the ability to select on Revit's Demolish tool, which looks like a big sledgehammer. So click the sledgehammer up there and click on each of these interior walls. And you'll see that each of these walls have now gotten demolished, or they're getting demolished, and they have the right line and style associated with them for a demolished wall. Move once again back to your project browser and double click on Level 1 New. You may need to move your mouse into the drawing area in order to be able to see the view display. Here, though, we can see that all these walls are our existing walls, and the demoed walls are no longer there in this new environment. Why? Because they've been demolished and they've been taken out of the project. So to add some more walls in, simply go up to Architecture, pick on the Wall tool, and draw in an extra wall or two here in the project. And hit Escape a couple times on the keyboard whenever you're done. What this will have done, if we double click on Level 1 Existing underneath Floor Plans, is we'll be able to see the way that this building looked like in an existing view, the way the building looks in a demo view, as well as the way the building looks in a Level 1 New Construction view. So phases are set up by telling each view which period of time that they need to be associated with. Also, the original phasing is set up from underneath the Manage tab and creating the appropriate phases in your phasing dialog box. Levels are used in Revit to specify the height at which objects will be inserted or drawn at. If we take a look at our floor plans, the Level 1, and have our elevation, south elevation open, we'll notice that Level 1 is at a 0 feet 0 inch elevation, which means that if we would draw anything on Level 1, by default, it'll try to be 0 feet 0 inches off of the ground. With our Level 2 floor plan, if we would go into that and start drawing those objects in, any object we would by default place would be 10 feet off of the ground. If the Level 2 would move up or down, then all those objects associated with Level 2 would also go up and down, so they would keep the appropriate elevation or height off of the ground whenever we're modeling inside of our project. Levels are used for defining the locations of where each of our floor plans are going to be in three-dimensional space. Most likely, you'll have a roof level to specify the elevation at which your roof will be at. You may have parapet levels, top of footing levels. A level will be for any time you're going to have multiple objects and you want to draw them at a constant elevation, you'll create a level for that. The process of creating the level is this. I usually like to zoom all the way on out so that I can see the entire length of my levels. Underneath the Architecture tab, select on Level. When you do this, on the Options bar going across the top of the screen, there'll be a check mark next to Make Plan View. What this will do is it'll automatically create a new plan view here underneath your project browser. This will work really well, so after we've drawn in our first level, which will be Level 3, we'll be able to do another floor at that level, at that elevation. There's a button next to Make Plan View that says Plan View Types. If you select on that, you'll see the different types of views that by default Revit's going to try to create over here under the project browser. Click on Structural Plan. Because now only Ceiling Plan and Floor Plan is highlighted, those are going to be the only two new plans that get created here under the project browser when we create our new levels. Let's go ahead and try that by clicking on OK. Move over to the left-hand side. We'll worry about the exact elevations later, and click when you get that dashed line showing up at the end of your level lines. Move straight over and click again. Do this one more time. Once again, I'm not worried too much about the elevations. We're going to adjust this after the fact. When you're done with the clicking, hit Escape a couple of times on the keyboard. What you'll notice is it's now created those extra levels here underneath floor plans, as well as underneath your ceiling plans. If we zoom in, we'll see that the elevation for Level 3, because of where I picked, is 18 foot 6 inches. Yours might be slightly different based on where you picked. Now, if I want my Level 3 to be at a different elevation, I can do that. Simply click on the level line itself, then click on the dimension, and type in this case, 20 for 20 feet, and hit Enter. Now Level 3 And if anything had been drawn on it, anything that was associated with level 3, has now been raised up to the 20-foot mark. Do the same thing with level 4, except make this be 30 feet. And then click just somewhere out in space to help in the command. Another way that we can create more levels is by using the copy command. If you select on your level 4, move up here to the copy command, which looks like a circle with 2 other circles. Click once. And I usually like to click on that line that I'm getting ready to copy and move straight up. Just come up a small 1 foot 6 inches and click. And hit escape a couple times to get out of the command. One thing that you'll notice is whenever you use the copy command, something is special about that new level that you just created. First off, it's black in color and not blue. What this indicates is that a new level has not been created underneath floor plans or underneath ceiling plans for this particular level. In this instance, if we had wanted another level to be associated with it after using the copy command, this is what you can do. Underneath the View tab, we're going to have the ability to add new floor plan views. Move over here to Plan Views, and you'll notice that there's an option there for floor plans. Select on that. Make sure that level 5 is highlighted and click on OK. And now you're going to see a new level 5 floor plan view under your project browser. If you do the same process for reflected ceiling plan views, select level 5, you'll now have a level 5 view underneath ceiling plans. If you're ever going to use copy, copy is good for just copying that level up, but it won't automatically create new views for you. If you use copy, you'll have to manually create those levels underneath the View tab and using the Plan Views tool. Let's close these 2 views down by clicking the X up here in the corner. I want to point out a property that's associated with these levels. If you select on the level, you'll see a little checkbox right here. If you clear that out, it'll remove the head at the end of these level symbols. So clear it out, it won't be there. Click on it and it will. There's also a little break symbol here. If you select on the break symbol, you'll be able to drag the dot to a new location. By doing it this way, if you have 2 levels which are very close to one another, you can separate these out so we can see graphically what the elevation and names of these 2 levels are. If we want to space these out a little bit further, we can. Simply select on the level line, click on the dimension. In this case, I'm going to type in 33 feet and raise this level up to that 33-foot mark. And if we wanted to bring this back down again so it's in a straight line, just click on that little dot and you can pull it down. It'll almost snap into place. And when you let go, you'll see that it's coming straight across now. So the act of creating levels is coming underneath the Architecture tab and selecting the Level command off of the ribbon. And the purpose behind levels is these are the different elevations at which each of your different floor plans are going to be created. As such, you'll want to set this up very early in the project because the earlier that you drop these level lines in, the easier it's going to be to start creating your first, second, third floor plans on the fly.